welcome to another episode of Inquiring Minds. I am your host, Steve Harper. With me, as always, is my amazing co-host, Donna Carlin. Donna, how are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Great. I love those glasses. You always have the most interesting glasses. I don't know if people pay attention to that on our videos, but I mean, it's like how many pairs of glasses must you own is a great question to start off with today. You must
I
have a dozen.
four. No, four.
Four. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
four pairs.
I mean, yeah, they always are awesome. I love them.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what are we talking about today?
So, why do leaders fail to realize the true power of connecting with their people at every level?
Ooh, I love this topic. I love this topic. Well, so as we dive into it, I think one of the things that most leaders fail to do is recognize the importance of doing that. And when we talk about every level, we talk about from the people that you see that support that office, your maintenance personnel, your, folks that are answering the phones, it's people that are in reception, people that are responsible for any of the support activities, all the way up to and through, regular, day-to-day employees, managers, department heads, your senior leaders, your executive team. I think it's super critical that you, as a leader, kind of look at all of those as really critical and important connections because every single person is an important cog in that corporate wheel, right?
For sure. And the word you used, leaders. You cannot lead unless you have people on board. You
Yes.
cannot lead unless you have a relationship with your people. You could call yourself the role of a leader, but you aren't a true leader if you don't connect with your people. Because if people don't feel that you care about them as individuals, that they have lives and they have contributions to make and that they have meaning within the scheme of things, they're there for the paycheck and you're never going to get them on board. And they're not going to stay long because people take jobs because of people.
Yes.
People leave jobs because of people, period. If you don't connect with your people, you're in for a whole world of grief and it's expensive because you're
Yes.
constantly having to replace people, train them up only for them to leave. And you can't figure out why. I could tell you why. It's because you don't care about your people.
Right, right. I love that. We started off kind of talking about your glasses, but I often tell my clients it's about connection points, things that you notice about people that really stand out to you about them. And I remember years ago doing an engagement with a corporate client, and I had a fairly high up executive that was sort of looking at what I was talking about through the process of connecting is, this is, soft skills. So everybody should get it, right? Everybody should understand it. And soft skills, I really take exception with the word or the implication of soft skills because it implies it's simple and easy and it's anything but, right? And especially in today's world, there is an art form necessary to actually be good at it, to connect with those people. And I think a lot of times we sort of assume that everybody kind of gets it. It's common sense, and this is the way. But my common sense isn't your common sense. And I was mentioning to this particular leader how critical it was that they show through their actions every single day that they are committed to getting to know their people and to get out from behind the desk and actually engage. And the feedback that I got was, well, what am I going to talk about? Because we already have, meetings twice a week and et cetera, right? And I said, well, this is a perfect opportunity for you to ripple. Find things that really intrigue you about that person or things that maybe, that you notice about them, how they decorate their office or their cubicle, certain, sports teams that that they're supportive of, give those things more attention because those are the things that are important to those people at that level. And when you pay attention to it, you shine a light on that. You make, you notice it. It makes people feel good inside. Like when I asked about your glasses, your smile went just like full blown, right? Because it is something that, not most people will ever acknowledge. But when they, you say something like, you always have the best smile. When I walk into this, this building, you greet everybody with the most, positive, encouraging greeting ever. And I just want you to know how much I appreciate that because you are really our first impression that our clients and our prospects get of this organization. You say that to someone that's in reception or someone that's, greeting, folks that are coming into the building. Now you have really showed them how important their work is, but that you recognize how important their work is. And it can be as simple as those activities, or, hey, did you change your hair? Or, you look especially rested and excited for the week ahead, or whatever it might be. But those little things become those opportunities to have those conversations and really, really get to know those folks at a deeper level.
Years ago, I used to be president of a think tank like organization that was international. And it was a multi stakeholder think tank. So it wasn't just people in my field of coaching in organizations or coaching psychology. It was recipients of the
Mm-hmm.
coaching. It was managers of programs that bring in coaching, researchers, and educators. So the whole purpose was, what is the education out there? What is the research telling us that is needed within our field? And how is the educational world meeting those needs?
Yeah.
What are people actually doing within an organizational context? And how are responding to that? And one of the reasons I'm sharing this is I had a lot of pushback getting people around the table, because once a year I
Yeah.
wanted a lab. I didn't see people in person. I wanted to bring some of the key players in the organization together to determine the future of where we were going to go the next year and the year after. So we would gather and have these critical conversations. I knew everybody around the tables. I usually had about 25 there, but they did not know each other.
Yeah.
And that was important for the work to get done and done well.
Yeah.
So, what I used to do, speaking of making connections, is I used to say, we're going to do snippets before we start. And they go, what's a snippet? I go, short, sweet, one sentence thing that you're going to share with the room that they would never have guessed about you.
Yeah.
So they went around. One person said, I climbed this huge mountain, and they looked at this person and couldn't imagine her climbing a mountain. And it was like, oh my goodness, like it gave them food for conversation around breaks and meal times and everything else. And we went around the table, and I was waiting for my friend who was sitting next to me, somebody I'd worked with previously, who looked like, a grandmother that you might meet in the grocery store. And she looks up at everybody and she goes, I was a spy for the CIA. Silence. And the rest of the room went, we're not going next. That's it.
Yep.
We
That's
cannot
it.
talk
Game
next.
over.
That's it. And it was just so funny because every time she would open her mouth, their jaws would drop and they go, seriously, you're joking with us. And they had a totally different view. Why I'm bringing this up, other than the fact that, she just floored the whole room, everyone had something to share that did that, though.
Yeah.
They looked at me and said, okay, we know you. What do you have to share that we wouldn't know? I said, I was a percussionist with a National Art Center Orchestra.
Yeah.
What? That kind of thing that they didn't know of me. Um, what is amazing about this is the next time you see these people, you will never view them through the same lens.
Yeah.
You view them as human beings with a life and passions that are not work related.
Yeah.
The conversations increase, the connection deepens, and it's harder to have conflict with somebody who you respect around the edges of work.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you and I are cut from the same cloth. I mean, I have ripple connection questions that are really geared to get people to engage at a level they never thought possible, even with a complete stranger, but even more importantly in a corporate environment where they may have worked in, the same department or in the same cubicle, in fact, with people that, for a long period of time, and they never actually learned anything about them. But when you can actually identify something that really means something to you and it means something to them, now you've actually set that relationship in motion where more mutual respect, more cooperation, more engaged, efforts are going to happen because we now have an invested interest, right? We've got hearts and minds. And so it's funny you talk about snippets. I've done a similar thing called the 7-word bio. And so, it's really hard to do a good introduction of yourself in 7 words, but, basically to get people to do that. And I was doing a corporate training one time and unbeknownst to me, that there happened to be an individual within this cohort that we were working with that wasn't very well thought of, actually. And she tended to be very intense, very focused, very much a rule follower. And that was irritating some of her clients, excuse me, some of her colleagues in this cohort. And so we go through this training, I'm up here, I'm talking about the concept of the ripple and the approach. And I start kind of like you did. It's like, hey, before we get into it, however, this is what we're going to do. And I can't, of course, remember her exact phrasing, but as people went around, you saw people's like light bulbs go off because they would see something in somebody that they were intrigued with. But then they get to this lady and everybody kind of rolled their eyes like, here we go. Yeah. I was the ultimate rule follower or whatever was going to be her bio. And it turned out she was an Olympic swimmer and had done fairly well in the Olympics. And everybody was like, are you kidding? Like, you've never said this. You've never asked. And one guy said, I now look at you from a different lens. I get you from a different perspective. And of course, as we did the training throughout the day, we kept coming back to this process. And it became very obvious that two things were happening. One, people had a perception of her based on how she performed and acted at work that was so inaccurate, but they hadn't taken the time to dig beyond it. But then at the same time, she had never felt comfortable to actually open up or reveal anything about herself. And by the hook or crook, we got that from everybody to figure out how to create that level of comfort. And actually, this one individual said, now I understand why you're so competitive. I understand why you're so focused. And she admitted she knew it was a weakness to a certain degree in a team environment where she came from. All her youth and early adulthood was geared around an individual performance and sport. And she recognized that she needed to be better, but they recognized they needed to cut her a break. And collectively, it was like you just watched magic happen because just one little thing opened up the door of completely different perspective. And I think what you're saying, and really the whole intent of this topic is to get leaders to think about that, to look at people through a different light, through a different lens. It's not scary. In fact, you actually win those people over a lot quicker, and they want to do a lot more for you and for the organization when they feel like they've got a home and they feel like they're valued. They're seen and they're valued by their leadership.
So a couple of things. One is for the initial question that you were asked, what am I supposed to talk about?
Mm-hmm.
Ask a question. What surprised them over the weekend?
Yeah.
Did they learn something new? Did somebody achieve something that you're very proud of? There's all kinds of questions to ask.
Yeah.
Second thing is the conversation has to be authentic. And I hate using that word because it's so overused.
Yep.
The thing is, listen for the answer. So many people ask the question and then either change the subject or say, that's good, and walk away. And they don't really acknowledge that the person shared something that they wouldn't have if you didn't ask the question.
Yeah.
Then the last piece of that is, as a leader, share something that you experienced afterwards to say, you know what I learned this weekend that blew me away, and just share it.
Yeah.
And wish them a good day, that you look forward to learning more about them over time.
Yeah.
And make sure that you touch base.
Well, and two things I would say, I love those ideas and those strategies. Two important things I'd add to that is, thank them for being there. If you're the leader that's always grateful and say, I'm glad we had this time to talk, but I'm looking forward, like you said, to learning more about you. But thank you for being a part of this team. Thank you for your contribution here. We don't ever say that as leaders nearly enough. But the other aspect as a leader is these connection points. We don't have great memories, right? A lot of times, especially as leaders, because we have so much thrown at us. We just talked about that in a different episode recently. So,
right.
Where distraction is very challenging. But when you learn what I call a little knowledge nugget about a person, right? That connection point, something that makes that person stand out to you. The best thing you can do is get that written down somewhere, right? Put it on their, their profile or on their, however you track them in your address book, your email. and review those things occasionally. Look at those things because, and that's true whether it's, you were doing that for your employees that are working for you, an important client or colleague. These connection points, it's always very valuable for you to go back through those processes and then take notes as you learn more about those people, because you never know where that next interaction may lead. And if you've got fresh in your mind things that you've learned about them from prior interactions, that's an opportunity for you to take a conversation a completely different direction. And what you do in the moment is make that person feel amazing, because you're like, I can't believe you remembered this was my 20th year, 20th high school reunion this past week. And I can't believe you took the time to ask it. You're this big, powerful, executive. And, I know you're busy. Why would you ever have time to even think about what I'm doing on the weekend? You make that person feel amazing just by putting a little bit of context around that and shining a little light on what you picked up the last time you interacted.
Really cool thing to share very briefly before we wrap this up.
Yep.
At Lockheed Martin, one of the senior leaders there initiated a program called I Caught You Doing Something Good.
Yeah. I
And a
love that.
sticky would go up on their cubicle wall or on their desk saying, I caught you doing something good, with a blurb of exactly what it was. Like in a few short words, it's got to fit on a sticky note. There you
Yep.
go. And it wasn't just saying good work. It was literally in the moment or as close to the moment as possible, to have it there to surprise them when they got back to their cubicle or their desk, showing acknowledgement. They didn't even have to sign it, but it went from the lowest secretary to the vice presidents,
Yeah.
and vice versa. Like, level did not matter. It was, I caught you doing something good
Yep.
program. And they continue to do it. I think that is amazing.
Yep, absolutely. I love that. Ken Blanchard, I think, co-authored a book. I don't remember who his co-author was, but a book called Whale Done, how you educate mammals to perform. And they were talking about it's positive constant reinforcement, right? And you're always looking for ways to do that. And so they turned that into kind of a cultural phenomenon during the, gosh, dating myself now, late 90s and early 2000s. But that was a book that it's all about attention, and it's about paying attention and focus and shining a light on the things that people do right more so than they do wrong. And as a good leader, you don't always have to have just a work thing to recognize somebody for. It's them being there every single day, showing up on time, their attitude, their positivity, their contribution to the company. You can never really run out of things to talk to them about, really, at the end of the day,
That's right.
if you're an engaged leader, right? So
That's right.
this has been a fun topic. I mean, you and I could probably go for hours on this because we love it so much, because it's such an important aspect. But Donna, tell people how they might give us their impressions of this topic, how they see it, if, maybe in their own work environments, or, some of the challenges they've faced engaging as leaders, or, just, general feedback or questions for maybe future episodes.
So write us at our websites. The addresses are right in front of you. We could, we really would want to hear from you, and we will respond. That's the first thing. The Facebook page, Inquiring Minds with Donna Carlin and Steve Harper. Continue the conversation. Let's keep it going, and suggest topics there, which would be wonderful.
Yep.
Our social media pages, you can have access to the links through our websites. So be a part of the conversation as well as a listener.
Yep, absolutely. And for our podcast listeners who aren't seeing the screen, website for Donna is donnacarlin.com, and mine is ripplecentral.com. And like she said, all those access points to us as individuals. And then of course, like Facebook, we're building a really cool community of engaged leaders that are curious about these topics and how to apply them. And we'd certainly love for you to join the Facebook group and be a part of that. So Donna, this was fantastic. I really, really love these conversations that they just set my day off in the perfect direction. So thank you for agreeing to continue to have them, and for us to continue to have these inquiring minds, putting these topics out there. So have a phenomenal rest of your day.
You too, and to be continued.
Yes, absolutely.